Transferable skills.
From Cackle Media, this is Transferable Skills. I'm Noah Mishkin. Today's guest is Mike Peditto, who went from being a recruiter to a job search influencer. You can see a lot of his videos and content linked below and on his website, which is also below. I did very minimal editing of this episode, and that was more to test things out. We had a debate in the beginning, and the challenge was accepted. I'm not going to edit this episode as much as I usually do. We'll see how it goes. Anyway, with that, I hope you enjoy. Mike, it's great to have you here on the show. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, awesome. I appreciate it. I'm excited. It's our Monday morning, ready to go.
This is a great way to start my week. I jumped deep. Oh my God. I jumped deep into your content, and I was really excited by it and very enthusiastic talking to you today because you cover a few things that are super interesting to me. Very interesting to me. The first is all about skills, recruiting, looking for a job, candidacy. So that topic obviously is very relatable and interesting to me. It's a lot about this podcast. But then talking to somebody who has made a transition into content on social media, and it's really interesting. We're going to get to through your career journey, but then where you're at today as a full-time content creator. And so I'm going to take a deep breath. Can I do that again? I have a bad habit of rambling.
That's all right. Me too.
And many people wouldn't notice it because I edit these shows so heavily.
Oh, yeah.
As a content creator, you want your episodes, you want your content to be so tight. You want your clips to be really tight to capture everyone's attention and not lose them. And I treat that the same way, even at a mid-length, or not long format, but mid-length, like 30 to 45 minutes. And I feel the need obsessively to do that too for this. So most people wouldn't know that I ramble a lot. I have a bad habit of talking a lot.
Yeah. No, I get it. And yeah, I'm the same way. A lot of times it's just hit record, and then at the end, just a ton of work of get rid of every block and every breath and every kind of pause. And I talked about that for 3 minutes too long. I get it.
What's the right thing to do? Do you think it's better to do a bunch of new takes and try to be more concise, condensed, or do you think it's just better to do it in post and edit everything later?
I think it depends. Or I think for short form, it's like it has to be a bunch of takes, like a bunch of new takes, because you go and you're like, oh, that'd be sharper if I just said these 4 words. If I just do it this way and this way. Or so whenever I try and do a TikTok where I like just hit record and I like talk for a few minutes and edit it down, it's never as good as the one where I just do it in 4 or 5 second bursts of that's the right way, that's the right way. When I do podcasts and stuff, like for me, it's usually just go and then edit it all down and clip it together. And it's one of those things you're so much harder on yourself than anybody else anyway. I'm so obsessed with getting rid of every pause or every this. And then you listen to a show and you don't even realize like people are saying it and like, that stuff's happening and you don't even care.
All right. So you think this is a me problem? Do you think as a creator, I obsess over the nuance and the small little details that I edit out painstakingly, when in reality, if I didn't edit them out, it would add maybe 4 minutes to the entire length of the episode and people wouldn't even care or notice?
Yeah, it depends on what it is, but probably not. It's stuff you notice, but also isn't that part of creating something? Like you could say that to a painter, like, well, if you would have not changed the color or added that line, nobody looking at it would have said it's missing that line, but you thought it needed it. Like it's your show, it's your content. If you want it, all of that out, then do it. If you want it to be more like that stuff in there and maybe it gives a human feel to it or whatever, then you can have it. But there's no right answer unless it's, the only time it becomes the wrong answer is when it's like stopping you from doing it. When you're just like so obsessed with the getting right that you're like, I'm not even gonna put it out because it's just never ready.
That's the definition of when you have a real problem. Like clinically speaking, behavior is not a problem unless it's actually causing negative impact on your life or maybe your loved ones around you. So I guess if I'm editing it or doing anything obsessively and I'm happy with the results and it's not coming at the cost or detriment of anything else in my life, so be it. But if it is taking 3x longer to produce something than it should, maybe that is problematic. I don't know. Maybe I'll just leave in the beginning to this episode as an example of what it's like when I don't do a retake and when I just ramble on and talk about it. And because that's where we're at now, talking about this.
Yeah. Let your listeners listen to all 6 minutes of this and then comment and be like, never do that again.
Right.
Like, no, we really like that part of the show.
There's the business analytical side of me that actually likes doing split testing, not necessarily with this show, but in life maybe. So I might do one episode where I don't edit at all and one episode where I edit heavily, do I have enough quantity of data in order to be able to surmise which one is better? I don't know, but I do like that from a scientific experiment.
Yeah, I can't do that. I do it with my newsletter and stuff. So do you want to A/B test different titles, or a lot of social media, but like you can A/B test different thumbnails or this way. I'm like, no, I don't want to keep questioning myself. I'm like, this is the way I did it and I'm putting it out.
Right.
I don't need half the people telling me that it should be the other way.
It's also, I also obsess over the continuity too. If you're A/B testing, it means you're not being consistent and there's less continuity. And maybe this isn't flattering, but I think I'd rather be wrong, but be consistently wrong as opposed to looking like I don't know what I'm doing and trying a whole lot of different things until I get to the point where one of them is right.
You disconnect too much when you over edit and you overthink it. People connect with real, they connect with who you are. Like people choose to follow and listen to people that they like and see themselves in or relate to or whatever else, not people because they have the best edited show.
That's very true.
Like terrible editing could cost you an audience, but no one's only like that show because of how well it's edited.
I've never heard anyone suggest or recommend a podcast to me or anyone else because of the editing.
Right.
It's because of the content. Ooh, I'm learning something now. I'm accepting something now. This is an acceptance.
Yeah, this is a good start. This is a whole new path than you probably even thought about going down today.
Well, there's the things that you have control of and things you don't. The things I don't have control of necessarily is how energetic or how focused I'm going to be on a Monday morning. But the reality is I was looking forward to talking to you today, truthfully, because we were put in touch by a good friend of mine, Dave. And Dave's, you got to meet this guy. He's doing some really cool stuff, very interesting things. We helped publish a book for him, and he's all over social media. When I checked out your content on TikTok and everywhere else, LinkedIn also, I don't know, by the way, if you're just cross-posting the same content or if you're doing specific content per platform. We'll get to that later. But I was checking out your things across different platforms, and I love the subject matter, obviously. It's about careers. It's about candidacy. It's about interviewing. It's about how to present yourself and so on and so forth, which is a big undertone of this show. It's to get inspiration by people's career journeys and pivots and strategies. But ultimately, it's how are you positioning yourself for the next chapter in your career. So looking at that was super interesting to me. And then also, it's not just what you're talking about, but it's who you are. I don't know if this is persona or this is who you are in the real world in your life, but you just have a great presence on camera. And I like how approachable you seem to be as a viewer. I listen to your stuff and I watch your videos and I'm like, this guy looks like somebody I trust. And I'd like to hear content from and suggestions from.
Yeah, that's the goal. That's me. And it goes back to what we're even talking about, right? Like people choose to follow or listen to you because they like you and they want to get it from you. And my videos they're not well edited. They're edited enough. They flow, they're going. But you see a lot of content out there, short form content especially, that just has the graphics and the B-roll and the flying in, and I don't do any of that. Every time I try, a video fails because my audience doesn't connect with it. I think they scroll quicker. I still try it, but every time it's not worth it for me because I'm being me. And I think that's what people like and want. And it's just like, it's going to be the number one overall lesson for all this over and over again is just who in that video is the same person that you talk to if the camera's off.
Case in point, I like your videos. It seemed like you're a real person and you're just doing what you want to do about who you are and representing yourself. That's what was relatable. And even better if it means less editing, all that stuff to make a very short format video with all of those distracting cuts and fly-ins and overlays and text. That takes more work. And it takes more work in order to hold people's attention and to make it seem branded. But that's actually not what I want when I'm watching one of your videos. I want to be focused on what you're saying, not distracted by all the other stuff. So good on you for being you. It's also what you just said. What you just said actually resonates because what you just said ties very well back into what was said earlier, which is just be yourself and be who you are, as opposed to saying, who am I trying to attract? It's not about the audience. It's about who I am. And if I am who I am and I'm authentic, then the audience will find me. The right audience will find me.
Yeah, 100%. And that was Even getting into the start of this, and I don't know like where you would want me to start or go from here, but I didn't start doing any of it with any intention. It literally, if you would have told me like a guy in my 40s who was about to make like my first ever TikTok, like where I'd go, I would just be like, no, that's insane. I didn't make it with any intention of, start going viral and build an audience. Like I just like wanted to see it and try it. And so I was never seeking an audience, and I never tried to seek an audience. An audience found me from day one. And that'll probably get into a ton of what we talk about with even like the way I respond to people. And if you've dug into me, you've seen me in LinkedIn, like I get messy sometimes, but just I know my audience, they come find me. I don't care about anyone else.
But you must have had some intention. You wanted to see what would happen. You were curious and you wanted to explore a video when you first uploaded your first TikTok. But there had to be some sort of thought of what do you hope to come of this, or what do you want to do? Why did you make that first video?
It's a good question. So I remember the day. So I had gone through a layoff, and I was the first layoff of my career. I had a very successful career up to this point. Never been laid off, was doing really well at the job. And I got laid off, and the job search was tough. It was the holiday season. The job market was just starting to turn bad. And this was a couple years ago. And I started a new job. So I got laid off in November, started a new job in February. And I started the new job, and it was slow. It was just onboarding was slow. This job didn't really work out, and we're not going to go on that ramble right now, but it started slow, and I don't know what made me like set up a TikTok. And I just made a video that was basically like, hey, I just went through the job search, and I've seen so much of this. It's just coming at me. It became my algorithm. Just like the internet found out I was sending resumes places and just decided to bury me in job search content. And most of it was awful. It was wrong, or it was gimmicky, and it was predatory. It was all these things.
Can you describe a little bit further what that means? I know what it means because I've seen it.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, so like I shouldn't say most, but a lot of job search content that's out there, like most things on the internet, right? Go back to pre-internet, the evening news, if it bleeds, it leads, right? And then the internet comes and clickbait is here. And it's just like, to go viral on the internet, to get a big following, you usually have to be flashy and have these hooks that draw you in. So a lot of job search content is meant to flame the anxiety in people about the job search. The reason you're not getting a job is because you're doing this thing wrong, right? You've probably seen that video come across. Stop making this on your resume. And it's usually a bunch of garbage that follows that.
To be provocative and then seem relatable to stoke that fear, to make you feel insecure in order to then take action.
Yeah, and it's setting up scapegoats. And almost all of them were selling a course on how to get a job or whatever else comes, right? Like the idea, and I talk about this a lot when I talk about like how to find, if you're going to go a career coach route, which I don't do, but if you're going to go a career coach route, like what to look for and what not to look for. And one of the things I say is if the feeling of their videos and the feeling of their content is like things are bad and you need me to get through them, then that's not correct. That's someone you want to avoid. So that's what a lot of it was that was out there. So I made a video, and I remember my very first video. It was terrible. I can go back and watch it, and like you talk about bad editing, like slow millennial pauses and just not cutting out.
We'll link it down below.
Okay. Yeah. I'm like 80 pounds lighter in it, and it's real slow, but it's just because there is no universal job search hack or trick. And I give an example of, I don't mind a 2-page resume. Someone else says that they hate a 2-page resume. Neither of us are wrong. Those are opinions. You need to listen to people who will admit that is an opinion and not a rule, and understand you can't please everyone. And that was the first video. And I'm talking through AirPods, like the audio sucks on it. I don't know, it got like 2,000 views, which is a good first video, but it's not like a huge.
Very good. No, that's a very good first video. And also to your point earlier, again, it's about the content, not about the quality of your production or editing. Pretty messy audio, poor, if any, editing. And yet you were pretty successful on that first video.
Yeah. And there was a couple comments that are just like, oh, that's so right. And I think like another like recruiter content creator saw it and was just like, oh, this is a great video. And I was like, okay, cool. And I like texted my friend and I was like, yeah, I made a TikTok. And blah, blah, blah. And then I made like another one the next day. I made one a day for the first like week. And then comments were coming in. I was getting followers. I got, I don't know, 500 or 700 followers in a week. And I was just like, still in that mind, I'm like, wow, that's really quick. But to be big, you have to have thousands and thousands. So that's nothing. But like,
yeah, but you'll never have thousands and thousands day one unless you're a celebrity or you were on the news for something. And so that's already off to a good start. When you were making those first weeks or 2 weeks worth of videos, Were you also following strategy that you had read about in order to gain traction, or were you just posting content? And by strategy, let me further describe what I mean. I'm sure you as a creator, and I myself also, get about a dozen or 2 dozen emails a day all about what this person can do to make my content better. Fill in the blank. A lot of different things: SEO, hashtagging, strategic positioning, getting you on other shows. Excuse me. Point is, there's a lot of people soliciting their services to help make your content better in some number of ways. And there's also ways that you can do to position your videos for more strategic searchability and all that. Were you following any of that or trying to do that? Or were you just literally making a video, editing it, and uploading it?
Yeah, I was literally just making a video and uploading it. I didn't do anything that the pros say to do. I didn't watch other content. I didn't those videos hadn't even hit my feed yet, because now I get them constantly. My TikTok is still just, want to grow your TikTok, want to grow. The videos were terrible. There's another one I did where I'm like standing in my bathroom and the like fan is on in like the bathroom and the audio is terrible and it's like echoey. And in my mind, I just uploaded it anyway. Because
there's best practices and then there's worse practices. There's terrible practices. And
it was terrible practice. And again, it's because my intention wasn't to get a following. I was just replying to comments. People were leaving comments and asking questions, and I was answering their questions. I still, a week or two in, had zero intention of anything ever happening or coming from it. I was just being helpful to people.
Okay, so this is the key. This is the key to success. You're holding it right now, and you just covered it all. You named it, which is you're not trying maybe extrinsically to gain things. You're just trying to help people. You're approaching this holistically from your best intentions, holistic interests, wanting to help others with no real strategy or long-term strategic vision and goals in mind. And isn't that the key to success from everyone I have talked to?
It was for me. And it's funny because that was around the time where it was so, then all of a sudden what's your strategy? Do you do this? Or I don't have one. To be honest with you, I still don't. I still, to this day, do not batch record and get a bunch of videos ready, plan things out, schedule my content, anything like that. When I feel like it, I open up my phone and I make something. To this day, I still follow like bad practices. So who knows where I could have been with best practices? Who knows?
You're turning all assumptions on its head and saying, strategy is one thing, and maybe strategy, if I can use what I'm hearing from you right now as like an improper use of data, I'm going to take this as gospel when it doesn't necessarily mean to be. Strategy is for those that are still struggling with the content, are still struggling with figuring out who they are or who they're trying to approach. And if you figure that out and you know what it is, and you're approaching this holistically with best intention, and you're just doing it for the sake of helping others, strategy is not, let's say, necessary.
Yeah.
Potentially.
Strategy will help you. Strategy will help save you time and stress, right? Like I could be more efficient.
I was going to say, it can optimize things you're doing, but that's not necessarily, it's not predicated, your success is not predicated on the strategy.
Yeah. It won't make up for uninteresting content or things that aren't well made or things that aren't like a benefit to people that are out there. And I think that's the tip I see missing all the time from these. Just like there's career gurus, right? There's tons of content gurus like you were even talking about. And I'm like, you are selling something to someone who's failing and thinks that if they buy this package from you, it's what they need to do. When in reality, you can't make their content any better. You'll just make it look a little bit better or sound a little bit better.
Do you want to hear something funny? I'm not a victim. I've certainly fallen prey to a lot of those suggestions and content that have been promoted to me. Things like, for instance, how to be better at music theory, how to maybe work on your breath for singing better, how to maybe have here's a downloadable content, a package for assets on templates for fill in the blank, whatever. And so it's only like $29.95. And I can tell you something that has been almost universal. I've done this maybe 4 or 5 times. I think with one exception, I've purchased it and I've never actually followed through with whatever I just bought, whether it is sitting through the lessons, the classes that I ordered, using the templates. I realized that the promotions are excellent. They're very well crafted. but oftentimes, I don't know, it was impulse and it doesn't really fit into my workflow or lifestyle.
Yeah, and there's not a ton in them usually that like you don't really know or isn't that helpful already. And it took me a really long time to make my first ever like digital product for sale. I never wanted to. It was never my plan, like we've talked about. But then like I finally did, but it took me a while because I put time into it. And then I felt bad like charging anything for it. And I was selling for $4.99 my first ever product. That was probably worth $99 compared to what most people did. When I first started doing one-on-one coaching, because I was unemployed again and like I was built this following, people were like, oh, do coaching. I was doing it for $39 like an hour because I just felt so guilty about it. And I saw these like 25-year-olds with no career experience selling coaching, career coaching for $200 an hour. And it was wild to me.
Mike, for you and the listeners right now, obviously this won't be released for a couple, 2 or 3 weeks from now, but the episode for this show that released today was with a gentleman who doesn't like to call himself a consultant, but he's more of an advisor. And we talked about at length the trend of coaching, self-appointed, self-defined experts in coaching. And one thing that I explained, the difference between the coaches that I have had, and you're certainly no exception to this rule, the coaches that I've had on this show versus the ones that I have not invited to be on the show are the ones that come from because they've been asked to coach, not because they've sought out to be a coach.
Right.
The ones that are responding to the request because of their subject matter expertise and experience in life, and oftentimes even certification. And there's just so many people, like you said, who are young and fairly inexperienced calling themselves coaches. But you're doing it because people are reaching out and saying the content you have created is very valuable and helpful. And I'd like more of it, especially bespoke, maybe one-on-one personal approach. You get to a point where you can't ignore it. I don't want to say you can't say no. You can always say no, but you can't ignore the fact that people are coming to you. And if what you're providing to them has been helpful, certainly more of it that's more personalized would be a multiplier of that success and help.
Yeah. And I've lost out on what could be a lot of money with the approach I take to it, but just I don't like it for one. It's just not who I want to be. But
right.
Even today, I have a link like in my profile. People can book coaching with me, but I don't sell it. I don't ever make videos about it. And it's only one option. It's an hour with me. We can cover a lot, whatever you want. Book it if you want, and then email me. We'll set up a time. Otherwise, you'll never hear me ask you about this coaching again. And it's just there so that people don't have to ask me if it's there. And when I don't feel like doing it anymore, I turn it off for a while. And then like I'll put it back onto the page. But that's all I kind of have. But yeah, I know I could be charging a ton and making it doing it. But
here's the thing that you'll eventually figure out. You'll figure out that your time is worth something, whatever that is to you. You'll figure that out. It's not $39 an hour, but you'll figure out what that is that makes you feel both comfortable in the value that you're providing and the affordability for the individual that you're hoping will benefit from your service.
Yeah. And that's where I got eventually. I have what I think is a fair price out there, and I don't push it hard. And some weeks a bunch of people book it, and sometimes I go weeks without people booking it, and both are fine. I had somebody reach out to me on LinkedIn like a week ago asking about the book, and they were just like, I released a book recently, and the book's on Amazon. It's $30. And they were just like, hey, I really want the book. How much does it cost? I'm in between jobs. I can't really afford anything, like even like having food. And I was just like, I told him, I was like, honestly, don't buy it. I was like, I would love a sale. But like at the end of the day, I was like, this book's not a lifeline. This book's not going to help you get a job tomorrow if you buy it. Like where you are in life, your last $30 should not be going towards like a lifeline in hoping it'll get you a job.
I had a conversation with one of my career coaches in the past. When we were negotiating her fee, I asked her, I said, how do you feel about pricing it based on performance? And I said, here, I have very clear goals. And if you help me achieve those goals, there'll be a massive kicker. But you have to also lower your price for your hourly rate. She's like, I don't work that way. I said, I know.
Yeah.
I said, I know because I know who I'm talking to. I'm talking to somebody that's more traditional. And so I like challenging normatives in society and reality. And something that comes down to, if you put your money where your mouth is, if you believe in what you're doing and you believe that you have a high success rate, why wouldn't you? I said, you'll make a lot more money if you do it in my model.
Yeah, if everything was success. But that's the thing is you can't control success in that world. And that was like a big thing for me, like even in avoiding this was like, I don't write resumes for people. I would never be a resume writer because I think a resume it's such luck sometimes. Like no matter what, there's no perfect way to do a resume. I can sit down with you in an hour and I can give you a ton of advice and show you how I would do it and ideas to get going and help you start to phrase things. But like, you can tell when a resume is written by someone who didn't do the job and who's never done the job before. And so those are all those things, right? It's just like people will be like, oh, can we book a mock interview? And I tell them like, sure, I'm happy to mock interview you, but I'm also going to be upfront with you that there's a good chance that you don't get asked one question we talk about in this entire session, because that's just how that works. Unless they've told you the questions in advance, like this, I can tell you what they're probably going to do, but I don't know this person or this company you're interviewing for. I'd rather talk strategy or all these things with people. And that's what I ultimately use my hours for with people. But yeah, because you can't control that. And it's what's kept me out of that game. I know right now I could turn on MikePedittoCareerCoaching.com and book like thousands of dollars in it. And my wife and children would probably be super happy that I'm doing that, getting that money. But it's not what I want to do in this space.
Okay, so great time to define a few things. I'd like to go through your career. I know we're like a half an hour into this conversation. And by the way, that might not seem intentional, but it was intentional. It was an intention of mine. Speaking of earlier in the conversation, format editing and over prescribing and I obsess over details. I actually made an intention before I joined this meeting to not do a traditional intro as I have been doing for a number of reasons. I wanted to actually A/B test in this case. I wanted to actually test what it's like, because I think about most of the shows and conversations that I love listening to, they somehow jump into a conversation organically. Mm-hmm. But the problem is, even though you and I have never met in person, and this is only the second time that we've actually spoken, we can have a great conversation and I don't need an intro to you. But the listeners and the viewers have never seen you, and so they do need an intro. But when you make an intro, and I felt this in the moment when I did it even just here, which I'm not going to edit out. Maybe because I'm rambling again, maybe because I was thinking about this in the moment, like it was intentional, that I wanted to figure out how to get into a conversation organically without making an intro. So when I made the intro, I couldn't help but cringe a little bit because I was trying not to. And I just wanted to hit record and start talking. Point is, Jesus.
I think this should be the episode where there's no editing at all. And the whole thing
I was going to say that, by the way, earlier. I was going to say, as an experiment, what if I don't edit anything in this episode? It would be very interesting, but it also runs the risk of people being like, I don't need to go along
off the rail.
I can assume and maybe appreciate they have ADHD. I just don't need to go along on the journey with you. But maybe I'll do that. The point is that earlier I wanted to start with your career so we can get to where we're at now and understand how you got to where you're at. But I didn't want to also switch subjects so quickly. Can we start at the beginning? Can you tell us a little bit like what you were doing in your career and to how you got to where you're at today? And then we can further define and explain what you're doing in this stage.
Yeah, so I think my career is easy to split into 3 phases. So I started working for Kaplan Test Prep and Admissions when I was in college. I was a part-time worker there, and my job at the time was this was a long time ago. It was a very different world in how people studied, but my job was going to Kaplan centers for people who are prepping for the SATs and LSATs and MCATs and all that. That's what Kaplan does, if you're not familiar. I would work at the center on nights and weekends where people would come who were studying for the LSAT and check out workbooks that we covered in plastic, and they would just use the Sharpies and dry erase markers to do there, and then I would clean the thing and rewind the videotapes that they were watching. And it sounds like I'm talking about 50 years ago.
Rewind the videotapes.
And I mean, this was the 2000s.
Yeah, different era.
It wasn't that long ago. And then the classes moved online and everything. So I started, and then I moved full time there once I graduated college. And I worked for Kaplan for 10 years. I did a lot. Eventually, I was running a center. I moved around and worked in different centers. And eventually, I was just in charge of the center, hiring all of the part-time staff and the teachers and managing all these things. And that's where I got my hiring and managing and sort of leadership start out of all this stuff. Eventually, they closed all the Kaplan centers down for the most part, because by this point, 10 years into being there, everything had moved to online courses and online study guides. And they moved me into a traveling sales job. And I was good at it. I traveled and I sold nursing school programs to nursing schools. And I did that for a few years. And then my radicalization moment came where I was there for a decade. I had just blown away all my goals. I beat my goals by like August. By like December, I had doubled them all. And they were just like, yeah, there's not really a like promotion or new place to go now because we're all just remote and spread around the country. And like your boss is in charge of like the whole eastern half of the US, you know, and you're not going to have that person's job. And there was no like raise or bonus for, you know, the numbers. And I reached out to a friend of mine who was a recruiter. And I was just like, hey, is there anyone who does what you do but can help me? He was a tech recruiter and I wasn't in tech. I was like, but can help me find a job? Because I don't know what to do. I've never looked for a job. I've been in this company for a decade. And he's like, yeah, let's sit down and meet about it. So then, this is a long story because I'm going my whole career.
It's a great story.
So
keep going.
Then I met with him and he was just like, why don't you just come work for me? You'd be good at this. And I was like, oh, okay. So I just did. I just trusted him. So I quit my corporate job that I'd been in for 10 years. Everything I knew about just like building up through a company had fallen apart on me. I became a recruiter at an agency and learned how much better off people were, especially this time, by changing jobs every 2 to 3 years. I was really good at it, especially because it was me. I was the same person, but what changed was I was no longer doing sales because recruiting is like sales, but I wasn't asking for any money. I was helping people find a job and they didn't owe me anything for it. And that was my favorite part about it. There was no close. There was no like trying to get them to, okay, now I have to tell you what this cost. And it went great. And I took to it right away. And I was just crushing it and blowing away all these records they had. And I was just like learning. The industry was so interesting to me. And part of it might have been because I'd had experience building up large centers and managing and hiring already. So I did really well with it. And so then I was in recruiting for a long time and eventually left there and started moving internal recruiting at companies. For anyone listening who doesn't know the difference, like an external recruiter is the person who calls you and is like, hey, I have a client. Can I send your resume to them? You're good for this job. And the client pays them to find people. Internal is, hey, I work for Google and I'm hiring at Google. Are you interested in this role at Google? Like I review your resume when you apply to Google. I never worked at Google. And so I moved to internal recruiting. I bounced around to a bunch of different startups over the years because startups come and they go.
What's it like, though, from your standpoint, being in those jobs? How do they differ, you doing those jobs?
The biggest difference is pay. External recruiters work on commission. Now, again, they get paid by the client, not by the candidate. Like I said, you never had asked for a sale. So if I was an external recruiter, Google will say, hey, we'll pay you 20% of the person's salary if you can find me this person. So it's a little bit more of a mercenary, like for hire type of thing.
And there's typically also like it's based on retention. They have to be working successfully for X number of
there's
periods. And that's how you're compensated. Because otherwise it's burning leads. Yeah, I'll get a sale and it doesn't matter about whether it's a qualified sale or not. I'll get somebody in the door. And
of course, And it's all about relationships, right? Because you want to find them someone good who stays there, they like, and then they want to use you again for all their new roles.
I have a great question that I'm always curious about. How good are your digital forensics and research skills? Because I assume people in your position are really good at both finding people, but also digging up a lot about them.
Yeah, if I want to. It's funny because now things are way more paywalled than they used to be. Like now you try and Google anyone's like phone number or whatever, and you find those like been verified pages or whatever, like these pages that just want to charge you for everything. It's a little bit harder, but like, I mean, even right now I'm very good with like, when I don't like someone's comment, like I find out who you are. And I decide if I want to not come after you, but if I want to like have some fun or not.
Right.
That sounds worse.
I do the same thing too. If I see a comment that piques my interest positively or negatively, I want to know more about why would you say something like this, or why are you somebody that behaves this way? And so I'm going to go down a rabbit hole. I'm going to find out. I did the same thing recently. I have a habit of buying and selling things on used marketplaces. It's just an interest of mine. Like guitars is one of them, but other things like watches and things. And so I recently sold a watch and I didn't know who was showing up my door at my office. And anyway, so I was doing a lot of research on this person and I found out a lot about the person. I found out where they lived, the last 2 places they lived. I found out where they have worked, where they went to school. I found out some papers that they had written and published. I found out their social media presence across a bunch of different platforms, things that they have said publicly, things that they probably don't know are public that they have said. And I had all that stuff together. Just, you never know who you're going to meet in person. Part of it was out of curiosity and some of it was out of security and being proactive on that. But it's fun. And a lot of people that you're talking to probably do not realize how impactful some of the things that they have said, their digital footprint online could impact a job, and all the time. that people can be disqualified from an offer or even let go. We saw it last week. Sadly, I don't know if it's excessive or not, the line between your workplace and your personal life. Sadly, the person who was let go after stealing that home run ball at the Phillies game. I don't know. You have to be careful about what you say. And that's not, by the way, not to say that you shouldn't say what you're thinking, but at the same time, maybe don't think those things that you're thinking. If you're a closeted racist, maybe don't be a racist to begin with.
Yeah. And there's so many different levels, right? Because you're talking like people who go out there and like spew hatred on the internet who probably deserve something bad that happens. And then you're talking about like that baseball thing, right? Yeah, that was bad. She shouldn't have taken the ball from the kid. Should her life be ruined over?
No, probably not. And also, you have to remind yourself that there are very few places in our modern day Western society where people are expected to get emotionally heightened. And that is in any kind of sports arena is it's almost promoting that psychotic behavior. And so sometimes you act before you think, and we're all human. And so should that have big ramifications like that? Probably not. I don't know. It's also commentary about the choices in your life and who you are. But the point is that people say things, and I call it the YouTube comments effect, is that when there's no personal connection, even virtually, like you and I are doing right now, but if there's no face, then people forget that there's a human being that they are directing these comments at, and they lose all sense of ethics and human decency.
I could talk for several hours on this topic of, the way that people treat, like, I don't call myself a public figure, like whatever, like somebody puts themselves out there, like the way they treat you, like you're not a real human. You're entertainment to people. There's a viral video I really loved a while ago where this person said the internet will yes queen you to death. Like they would just cheer you on, watching you, knowing they have no stake in what's going on, and then step back when they're cheering, just like pushed you into trouble. You are nothing but a scroll and a digital thing to people. So like when I kind of hunt people down, it's more on the lighthearted side of, someone even commented on my video of mine this morning that was like, tell me why I was wrong. I was like, I would never listen to you, blah, blah, blah. And I found this person, I digged into who they were. I found their LinkedIn. They had worked at a library for 30 years. And I commented, I was like, look, I love the library. Thank you for your service. 30 years of the library. That's amazing. The last person who should be talking about what works in the corporate world in 2025 is someone who's been at the library for 30 years. You have no clue. And they deleted the comment because I think it's just like, oh, shoot, I didn't realize that.
That's a wake-up call. Yeah, we can find you. There's a couple people online who do this on TikTok and Instagram where they challenge their audience to say, send me a picture, and within a matter of minutes, basically, I can figure out exactly where that photo is taking place. I find it to be so fascinating. I learn a little bit myself. I'm not going to do that, but I think it's really amazing, and it demonstrates that nothing is really protected. Nothing is really private, and anything can be found, including anyone. Although it took a long time to find bin Laden, but should have gotten those guys on
better.
Yeah,
some people are harder to find.
Deeper in the caves. But everything can be found. And this is something as a parent I impart on my children too, is be careful of your behavior. I know at your age, they're teenagers, and at their age, they are who they are. But remember, what you say can come back to haunt you in ways that you didn't predict or anticipate. And whether it's a comment online, whether it's a video you found yourself in, whether it's a group of people you're surrounding yourself, guilty by association, but just be careful because that could come back to haunt you at some point.
Yeah. I mean, it's like that Catfish movie on Netflix right now, where that mom probably never thought it was going to come back to her, but like she probably thought she was totally safe.
Supposed to say spoiler alert.
Sorry. It's been on long enough. I'm one of the last people to see it.
But I know what you're talking about because everyone spoiled it for me.
Yeah, by the time I saw it, I knew what happened too, but you still watch and you're still amazed. But yeah, like it eventually gets traced back. It's just like eventually the right person with the right time and resources can find out who anyone is.
And the more significant a role is, the more likely the due diligence will be put in before making an offer.
Yeah. So I'm going to finish my bio now. That was, I could definitely talk about this stuff forever. You and I talk the same style where it's just, here I go this way. I get this from my dad, this big Italian storyteller.
Yeah.
But okay, so it was bouncing around.
Wait,
startups.
hold on. Before you continue, there was the end. Well, thank you for being here. No, before you continue, I wanted to say this before, but I didn't want to interrupt you. But when you said storyteller, it's worth noting again in the arc of this conversation and tying back to earlier about A/B testing, what people want, who you're delivering this to. Last night I was at an event and somebody approached me. Shout out Maya. approached me at this event and saying, I've been listening to your show. It's amazing. Thank you very much. And she said, I love the episodes where people tell stories. And she went further and described what that means. Not necessarily anecdotal stories, but that the career, the story of their career. And I didn't want to interrupt because you were in such a great flow before this when I interrupted about the internal versus external recruiter, because you were doing exactly what she was saying she loves people doing, talking about their career as a story and a long journey. And then I've also had other people say, I'd like it to be more bullet pointed. Can you get it down to more like, give me the details and then get into specificity? Anyway, so point is you can never appeal to
please everyone.
You can't please everyone, but what you're doing is at least what one person who approached me in person said that they specifically like. So thank you very much.
Shout out to Maya. You are going to love this episode, Maya. You bullet point people are going to hate me and probably have turned off by now.
All right, let's continue with your career.
Okay. So that is then, so that startup's going really well. My biggest thing was like, I was really good at what I do, but I never taken the time to build me. No one knew who I was. And like, they were famous recruiters and all this other stuff at the time, like years ago, whatever. But I was just happy in my job. And so then I got laid off the first time and started making videos, got a new job. And quickly into the new job, I was growing quickly. I was like a month into the new job. And I think at that point was at like 3, 4, 5,000 followers. And just like a couple weeks into making videos. And I told them about it. And they did not like it. And they're like, we're just worried you represent us when you talk. And I was like, technically I do, because I'm in charge of your hiring. So if I'm talking about hiring out there, like that is what's happening at this company as well, because I'm doing it. I think they like that response, but like it is what it was. Anyway, I found myself let go there a couple weeks after that with no real feedback or just vibes. As what I said, no cause, just vibes. And made a video that was just like, all right, I just got fired. And all of you who've been watching for the last couple weeks who say, I don't get it, you're going to watch me do this. You're going to watch me build this whole thing. And like that connected. Like that was just like, that was the lightning in the bottle. Everything hit. Oh, I made a video about my job interviews a couple of days after that. I was like, all right, I'm on the market. My first ever big video, I can remember it, was just like, I did 6 job interviews this week. I was asked 6 times, tell me about yourself. And I started talking about what happened in every interview and how it's so easy to get ready for these things because there's this template that they follow. And that video was the first million view video I ever had. And I went from like 6,000 to 30,000 followers in the weekend. And that was it. Then that was just like off and going. That was the first time that I was like, oh, I can make some money doing this.
I like that you were leading by example. You're demonstrating the subject matter that you're an expert in because you've been on the other side of the table, the recruiting side. And now you are on this side as the candidate looking, and now you're essentially walking the walk. You're doing exactly that you have been instructing or advising others, whether it's a company or an individual. And now you're doing it and you're showing behind the scenes.
Yeah. And a lot of times like when people ask me how I did or how I grew or whatever, I'm just like, it was lightning in a bottle. I couldn't recreate it today. I couldn't just make it happen the way that it did. It was right place, right time. And so that was going really well for me. And then that started turning into opportunities. I was getting paid gigs, paid sponsorships and things like that for the first time. And I was also like having companies offer me short-term contracts. Hey, we don't have anything, but we saw you. We like the way you talk about it. Will you do this 2-month project to help us fill some roles or whatever? And I was like, sure. I was like, I guess now like I'm just like in this consulting world because of that. So I did that for a while. And one of them turned into a full-time director of talent role. I finally had gotten to the level I wanted to be at my very first layoff. I was like, okay, I've hit this ceiling. I was just like the senior lead recruiter here. I'm really good. I think I'm one of the best recruiters out there, but I don't have anything impressive in my career. I want that director level. I want that next step. And I couldn't get it. And then all of a sudden I'd gotten it for myself through all these other things. Right? Then the director title fell in my lap. And which is a huge thing on personal branding, like another different route to go and why you need to have that for yourself. So I took this director of talent role at a company that had found me because of all of this to begin with. So they were big fans of me already doing content and making content all as a thing. So I didn't have to give that piece up. And I was able to take this director to startup role I'd always wanted in my career, do that role while building on the side. And I was doing both very well. And then it just became full into the one. And that's where we wound up here. Now I make content full time, but I don't just, when I say that, I think people think I make TikTok videos and like things like that. Yeah. And not even just that, but it's just, I think TikTok is dancing as its own, but like by content creator full time, I speak at events, or I work with companies on better hiring practices because I have that role, like we talked about with like why I blew up to begin with. I'm one of the only people in this space who has the behind the scenes chops, who's really good at it, and also was on the job market successfully several times during this. I bridged a gap that didn't exist somewhere else, like in this space. And that got me speaking opportunities. People wanted to hear from like the job seeker and the hiring expert combined into one. So I go to events and I talk and I meet with them and I work with tech vendors on what they could be doing to help on both sides of the aisle with these things. So it's just turned into all of these kind of opportunities just in the hiring world, which is why I struggle to say like what my job even is, because I'm not just like making videos, but that is a big part of it. That helps me find people.
Yeah. And I'm curious, as a content creator, and when you describe it as more than just making videos, that there's a lot more to it. You're speaking and you're doing other things and you're helping people, sometimes contracting short-term solutions for companies, organizations, but individuals as well. I'm curious how much information or follow-up that you get from your audience, whether they're just people who watch your content and maybe leave comments, but also people that you engage with personally. Do you have any kind of success metrics that how you're tracking towards helping individuals?
Like individual job seekers?
Yeah, it's interesting to me, like when you talk about social media and when we discuss anything about media and content, it comes down to oftentimes the metrics are views, subs, subscriptions, maybe even sponsorships, brand partnerships and things like that. And I'm curious how much a content creator can really find out the qualitative level of results from their audience.
Yeah, I'll only know what gets reported to me, but I have hundreds of comments saved. I have a folder where I favorite every comment where someone is just like, hey, I just want to let you know, like, I watched this video right before my interview and it helped me and gave me the confidence I went in, I got the job. And I always tell people, like, I didn't get you the job. If I helped you a little with advice, but like, you had to go get it. But I save all of those and I have them.
Does that fuel your motivation to keep doing it?
Yeah, it's really helpful because there's also a ton of hate, right? And I also use them to my advantage sometimes too. Like I have a lot of videos where someone's just, why should we listen to this loser giving job search advice? And I'll bring up this video where just these comments are just popping up like all over me. I'm just like sitting there in silence as they're like coming up all over. That's just like I use them. But yeah, I mean, there's no
such thing as bad press, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I saved the bad ones too. So I wrote a book that just came out called Yes, You're Being Judged. And it's called A Realist Guide to Job Searching. And it's really from this lens of what we've been talking about this whole time of like me being on the market and me being the expert at this stuff. I use real life examples. Like I show my own email chains I sent companies was on my own job search and talk about my own resume and my own interviews and like all these things. So in my book, in the acknowledgement section, because this is the kind of person I am, the end of the acknowledgement section is me calling people out. And there's 3 very specific comments that like I bookmarked during my time creating content early on. One told me that I'm on the fast track to getting cancer because I work in HR. One said, this guy will be irrelevant in 6 months. And one said, you contribute nothing. And I saved all of them. And I called the 3 people out in the book, the acknowledgements. And it just says, I saved those comments. I read them every time I wanted to stop. Every time I wanted to write this. And then I just said, I was like, I even marked on my calendar. I was like, today, and whatever day I made the video, but I was like, today is 762. Day 762, since you wrote in 6 months, I will be irrelevant.
That's awesome.
And the book came out today. And that's like the video. So just like,
did you let the 3 people know that they were acknowledged in your book?
Yes. Oh yeah. I made like the video and like tagged them or replied to them. One of them I think had blocked me already, but then that's who I am. I call out people in a nice way too and those things, but just, so I save all those, the good and the bad. So I don't have like data numbers behind it, but yes, like I know a lot of people who have like specifically come to me and just like, thank you.
Yeah. That's why I didn't want to say objective metrics of success, but rather any kind of qualitative, the ability for you to see that it's not just the numbers, which are an indication that what you're doing is valuable, relevant, and appreciated. The viewership, the subscription numbers are acknowledging that. And it's one view is the same as another view, which is the same as another view. What are the difference between the individuals that represent each one of those views and what has been their personal journey and experience that they have gained something from you in their lives? It's what is the human side of each one of those views of your video? And that is what's interesting to me.
Yeah. And so saving those comments is important. I get messages on LinkedIn or emails or wherever else. And I don't always reply. Like I try to, but I don't always, but I see them. And now with the book out, the book's been on the market for about a month and longer by the time this airs. But like even in the month it's been on the market, it's performed very well. It's all 5-star reviews at the moment on Amazon. And people have been emailing me. Just like, I got this book because it was recommended to me. And I love the way you talk about this. Or thank you. This has changed so much for me. Because like I said, none of it's the magic trick or the lifeline, but it's me talking about it in a way that most people don't. In this relatable, like self-deprecating, but also smart way about it. And I think people need to hear that. And the back of the book even tells people like, this is not some like motivational speech telling you to just put it on your vision board. It's going to work for you. This is not something that sounds as written by someone who hasn't sent out a resume since 2004. This is like real talk and stories about what's happening.
Yeah, these are pro hacks, or the kids these days would say cheat code. These are the cheat codes to finding the job.
Yeah, and it's not even right. It's very clear that like I don't want it to be. It's not a cheat code. It's real.
But that's the difference is that these books are oftentimes, most books are written provocatively, that they have to have some sort of thesis that looks unique or compelling. And in reality, they're often providing the same end result. They're hoping that you'll be inspired by what they have written here and then take action on it. What you're doing is you're cutting out the noise and saying, I'm not here to market myself. I'm not here to try to sell myself. I'm here to try to tell you, here are the steps that I know to work. Do this. It is the cheat code. It is the cheat code by way of authenticity. The things that work, that are the real things that work, that you know.
Yeah. And it's a lot of mindset shifting. And I think for a lot of people in the job market, it's about understanding what's actually happening. Like we talked about with like creators, like not thinking of people as like humans. A lot of people don't realize like when you're job searching, on the other end of like your application, I understand on one end of the application is like someone in need of work. Like I'll never forget that. But like on the other end of the application is also just like a person who's making probably less money than they need to survive in life, who has a boss who's demanding more of them than they really can provide, who's overwhelmed by how much work there is to do, who also, when we're talking about recruiters, is like the most hated person on the internet, just trying to do their job as well. Like they didn't invent the capitalist system that you're struggling under.
Assuming it is a person and not like an ATS scanner, which if you want to, if for a second, I'm curious to hear your perspective on the ATS scanner, which is, can you describe it and then give me your opinion on it?
So the ATS stuff has a lot to it, and I'll try and keep it simple. It's also something that like has been evolving a lot recently. So I always try not to like speak too definitively about some of this stuff. But if you're listening around ATS, it's an applicant tracking system. It's become the hottest buzz term of the boogeyman in the job searching world these days on the internet when we talk about clickbait posting especially. And ATS in reality is a digital filing cabinet for recruiters. For resumes, when you apply to a job, it goes into our ATS system. It's where we open jobs and type in job descriptions and set up interviews. It's no different than if you're in sales, like your CRM, right? It's Salesforce, but for recruiting. And that's it. It's not a magical piece of software. It's honestly behind most pieces of software. There are a lot of misconceptions about how ATS systems work, mostly perpetuated by the resume selling and career coaching industry. And this goes way back. I could go way down a rabbit hole that I won't. But essentially, a statistic was published that never had any data behind it by a resume selling company that said 75% of resumes are never read by a human. This was published back in like 2013. It said it's all read through an ATS. This is before like AI was even what it was now. And they paid to place it into a few media outlets, as you can do, including Forbes. So you can see Forbes has an article that says 70% of resumes are never read by a human. If you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see it was a contribution by a professional resume writer. It wasn't like written by like a Forbes writer or anything like that or research. No one has ever provided any data or anything for it. You talk to any recruiter who manages an ATS, they'll tell you that isn't what happens and that isn't accurate. Doesn't matter, I suppose. It's what's out there. It won the PR battle. It won how it is. So if you're listening and you just know an ATS, the best thing I can tell you is it's not the boogeyman you think it is. It's just some software. It is my ATS stance. Now, I will say as time goes on, does more AI get involved? Is there AI reading more than there used to be? Like, of course, that's just what's happening in the industry. Every ATS is a little bit different, but it is illegal for a company to rely solely on it and not have humans making decisions. In most compliant companies, there's currently an ongoing lawsuit against Workday, which is like the largest ATS system, which is being sued for having an AI that was using age discrimination in sorting resumes. So the fact that these lawsuits are just happening and people don't really know yet shows this has not been going on forever, and that most companies would not be relying solely on it, because like right now it's like a big gray area mess.
I did not know that this was illegal, and I did not know that any of this was going on. That's wild.
Yeah, most people don't. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there is a perception and maybe conspiracy theory that nobody's ever looking at or seeing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm certain that there are probably nuance to the legalese surrounding what percentage do we have to read for it to count as us reading. We're not going to read everyone.
Of course.
And so I think that talking to a lot of people I know who are in between right now and applying for the better half of almost 2 years, I hear that people might submit 100 applications before receiving a response from even one.
Yeah. And that's a matter of this current job market being overwhelmed by people, not whether it was a machine or not, because the same issues would exist.
So it's just saturation by volume of applications. It's virtually impossible to even respond to everyone.
Yeah. When the market is this hard, people want a answer and like a scapegoat, and this becomes an easy one. And what I always tell people is just like, if you follow the logic, it doesn't make sense. Because what people will tell you is, oh, AI is reading your resume, a human doesn't read it, and it's just looking for all of the keywords. And if it finds them, then like it passes you through. So then people will tell me, so I wrote the perfect resume for AI, all the keywords are there, and it's getting auto-rejected by AI. I'm like, that doesn't make sense. It can't be both of those things. Either throwing it on your resume is getting you an interview, or it's not. Both of those things can't be true. And I don't think people stop to play that scenario out when they say these things.
Obviously, AI is not going anywhere. It's going to be part of both the application process as well as the vetting, recruiting process and onboarding. And if there's one thing that you feel is hallmark to a resume that would allow you to stand out or seemingly just be more personable, something about you that will be impressionable, what would that be?
What I tell people when it comes to resumes is the best thing you can do is make your resume efficient and think of time to value. How quickly can I, an overwhelmed recruiter who's getting 1,000 resumes for this role, most of them not good, how quickly can I see what I need to see to know this is someone worth talking to? Use your space. I think you see people doing all sorts of things and putting these huge walls of text and all of this stuff. Make it easy to see what I need to see. That is ultimately the best thing you can do on a resume.
Yeah, the ATS scanner, it's funny, that's technology software that's used to scan, and it's no different than how human beings actually process a resume too. Being somebody who has been on the receiving end of a lot of resumes, we scan. We're not going to sit and read paragraphs. We're not going to read.
Right.
And bullet points are great. But even you need some definition and clarity surrounding the bullet points, but even those should be easy to quickly scan and understand, because the way, I'll tell you from my perspective, this is what I do, and I'm not saying that this is universal or even a good idea, but this is how I look at a resume when someone sends me. First is I'm going to look at the top. Obviously, so the most important thing should be at the top, and that is who you are, where you are, and anything about you at the very top that is specific to you as a person. And I'm not talking about interests and hobbies. I'm not talking about like the side stuff you do, other volunteer work you do. I'm talking about who you are and how to contact you and what's most important about you. Skills are important too. But then at that point, I'm going to quickly glance at the bottom to see, what did you study if you went to college? And so what are your certifications, credentials, and diplomas look like? Not because it's a prerequisite, but just out of my curiosity to start painting a picture of who you are. And then I'm going to very quickly glance from most recent and then further back at what you have been doing. And I'm just going to glance at a few of the things that you were doing within those roles, but then I'm really going to be looking at how long were you doing each one of those things. I want to see, are you somebody that has jumped around every 6 to 18 months a bunch of times, or do you stick with a company for long enough to both give the job an opportunity, but also long enough for them to evaluate you? And if you're good, you'll be there longer than 6 months likely. But that's how I do it. And then if I want to know more about you, I'm going to go deeper into some of that content to establish an understanding if I want to take this to the next stage and have a conversation.
Yeah, and here's what's funny about that, right? It's just that's a very different approach than I take. And but it's like I said when I talked to the very first video I ever made. Neither of us is wrong when we say this is how I review a resume, because it's how you review a resume. And it's why I hate resume advice. It's why I hate giving it. It's like the most talked about part because it's like what you send the most of, but it's like the part you have the least control about what happens from there anyway. Like I spend so much more time talking about getting ready for interviews and things like that. And like in my book, like the second chapter, whatever, like I get into like an intro and then like a resume chapter, and it just says like, hey, before we begin, I hate giving resume advice. I wish I didn't have to write a chapter in resumes, but my publisher made me. They said I had to put something about resumes in here. So here we go. Because of that, because just like you and I review resumes totally different. So an advice that I give might not matter in the way that like you would review a resume. And it's so subjective, and there's no universal standard to this stuff. I would love a future that doesn't have resumes. I've talked about this before, but that's super pipe dream. I could spend forever getting us to that.
Maybe the resume is just, it's defined differently. It's not a piece of paper, digital or otherwise, but maybe it's just your LinkedIn or a link to something different. I do agree that it is not a good representation of the individual as a human being and their qualifications. Like you might, by the way, have amazing technical skills, but really poor writing skills. And if you didn't utilize help from an outside source to review your resume, give you critical feedback, or even write it for you, then it's a misrepresentation of your qualifications for the job often that you're applying for.
Yeah. There's no perfect way to hire. There just isn't. And that's its own conversation. But I have this argument. I tell people all the time in my comments, like they're just like, oh, this shouldn't happen. This isn't how hiring should be. This should be abolished. This should be changed. I tell them all the time, I'm like, look, I'm open. Here's a dialogue. How do I fix it? I'm up for anything. What'll fix it? What's your solution? And then they're always just, oh, whoever's just the most qualified, hire them. What's that mean? So you're just saying whoever wrote the best resume now, like we like skip interview, whoever the best resume writer is? There's no way.
So I guess the better question, instead of saying what's your best piece of advice for your resume, is rather the resume represents the key, the access to get past the gatekeeper. So then therefore, if it's not the resume or if there's anything else, what was your advice to being noticed to get through the gatekeeper?
Getting through that stage is the hardest part. My advice is to do everything, right? So like people always say, should I do this? Should I do that? And if you're asking it, the answer is yes. People are like, should I message the hiring manager? Sure. Should I message the recruiter? Sure. Should I try to do this? Yeah, go. That's the hardest part because there's so many people getting in there. And I have emailed recruiters who never got back to me when I was looking for a job. I emailed recruiters who got back to me 10 minutes after my message. It was like, sounds great. Let's chat. So it's just like neither of those proves that it works or doesn't work. It's just everything's a low percentage in job searching. Everything is just like a 1 to 2% success rate. And you have to just understand that.
It's very similar experience and skills that it takes to do cold solicitation sales. You're selling yourself. You're the product now, not the software or widget that you're selling in a call center. You're selling yourself. And the statistics are probably quite similar. And the effort is actually quite similar. You have to prospect, you have to hound, you have to figure out every which way to get noticed and to make it obvious that you are something or someone worth talking to about this subject, whether it's a product that you're selling or now yourself. And so you have to figure out every way to get through past that gatekeeper or just at least to get noticed in order to increase your odds on the statistical conversion rate.
Yeah. And I think honestly, like even tying this to like the topic of what we're talking about, like the reason I think I've resonated and worked for so many people is because so much of my content is focused on the after that part. Because so much of my content is focused on what to do after you've gotten through that person who's okay, let's explore you for this job. Because now the ball is way more in your court. You have so much more control over this stuff. And I think that's so important. And you see so much content out there that goes really viral is here's how to fix your resume. Here's how to get noticed. Here's how to get noticed. Here's how to get seen. And that hardly works still because no matter what you do, it's like a 2% success rate. And even when it happens, now you have spent nothing but time working and redoing your resume and you're not ready for the actual opportunity that you begged for. My content, I think, is so much more focused on like, yeah, that part really sucks. Here's some ideas, but here's how you are going to be ready and do better when you get there.
It's awesome advice. I was watching a few of your videos also this morning. You released one just recently all about the transparency of the salary range.
Mm-hmm.
When organizations are publishing a job rec, it goes through all the description, the roles, expectations, background, experience, and then it also often, and sometimes it's state regulated, it's required, not always, is will have a salary range. And
Mm-hmm.
just because there is a range doesn't mean you are qualified to receive the top of that range and all the different parts that are going into them deciding where to make that offer within that range. I thought that was really transparent and interesting. And I think the perception from the candidate is, first of all, I should get the top no matter what, because everybody thinks that they're worth the most, which it's good. You should have confidence.
Sure,
in
we
who
all
you
want
are.
the most.
We all want the most, and we all should. And at the same time, if you get anything less than that, the assumption is they're playing hardball to see where like they're going to, an anchor offer. I'm going to start low. So that way we have, when we do negotiate higher than that, it's not negotiating from the top, but rather from the low or the mid. But in reality, there's a reason. And in fact, there are many reasons why somebody might fall within the criteria for establishing what that offer is within that range. I thought that was really helpful to see and hear.
I really liked making that video. I know the exact one you're talking about, and that I even hung that whiteboard for it, like just recently to do it. And it's a great example though, if that's not my normal content. And it's performed so much worse than like most of my other content does, despite the fact that I think like it's a way higher effort video. And it's just, again, me putting all that time and effort in isn't what my audience sees and is attractive.
But the difference is I went to your account to look for videos, as opposed to somebody who's being fed it through the algorithm and what they're going to respond to or see or whatever it is that catches their eye that they want to click on, whether it's the title or the thumbnail. But that's true. So it shouldn't factor into necessarily the average on as a case study, but I liked it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. That was like, and that's one of those videos again that I talk. If you've never worked in this world, you don't know that information. You'd have never heard the term internal equity in your life if you've never worked in some type of like internal hiring role.
Some of the questions that I always ask is about the skills that make you good at your job or what qualifies you to do this job. And it's obvious because that's your background. This is what you're an expert in. So you know that stuff. I'm curious if there are things that you have learned about recruiting since now moving into the content creation side.
Yeah, for sure. I think I became better at it doing all of this when I was doing both, especially. And I credit a lot when like I was on the job search, especially like early on into my making content. I became known at one point. I did 100 hours of live streams on TikTok in 2 months. I was on every day and people knew they could count on it. And I was answering questions. I was reading and reviewing resumes. I was doing my own job searching. I was doing all of it just like in live time and like talking to people. And what I always tell people is like, I went to where the job seekers were. I made myself accessible to them and learned what is the real issue. Right? I can't fix everything. I can't change hiring. I tell them all the time, like, even when I train companies to do this better, it's a drop of water in the ocean of like the system that's out there. But what I can do is represent you and get an understanding. And I don't think that's something a lot of recruiters do. It was just connecting with people made me better at it, changed the way that like my confirmation emails are worded. It made me change the way I prep people for an interview, the way I talk to them like during the interview, like all these little things that didn't have to be done differently that like I wanted to do differently now.
And I assume there's probably a lot of skills that you have gained now, in addition to just knowledge and understanding of the industry. You probably have gained a whole bunch of new technical skills, because really you're not working for someone, you're working for yourself. You're responsible for everything. You have to figure out all the different disciplines of your, let's call it small business, because that's what it is. You're marketing, you're promoting, creating content, you're scheduling, you're there, not very strategically, not a lot of scheduling. We know this is more authentic and in the moment, but ultimately everything that you do, anything that's going to help you ladder towards success is just going to be on you. Are there any specific skills that you feel you have not just gained, but gotten really good at since doing this?
I feel like I've gotten very good at video editing, which I had never done before, of course. And then one of the things I've tried to really do for myself is keep myself open to new technology. I think that is also like a really big takeaway from what I've done is like all these tools are coming. And I've put myself in a position where most of these tools want me, right? They want me to either advertise for them or use them or whatever it is. And I take pretty much every legit seeming demo. I take every opportunity. So I have learned to use these AI tools and these sourcing tools that exist in the recruiting world and different ATS systems. And like, I've taken the time to explore them all so that one, I can talk to job seekers about them. but can also talk to companies about them, because most of them aren't going to every conference and event like I do. And they're not talking to all these sort of brands. To them, they're more salespeople. But these tools are coming and they do matter. And I love that I can sit down with like a director of talent at some company and say, hey, here's the 6 different like AI sourcing tools that have come out this month. Here's what I think about them. Here's the difference and where they're going. So I've learned to really be able to evaluate a lot of these tools and go that way and play with them. Whereas when I was just a recruiter, they were just like spam email. I don't need more sales pitches. Like I don't need any of this. And you can't avoid all these tools if you're out there and you're building a team, you're working in the space, they're coming and you want to be known as the expert at them in your company, not the person who avoided them.
Yeah, said. Absolutely. All right. I'm going to ask you another question. I'm curious to hear your answer. Given your natural strength and your learned skills, what is a job that you feel you might excel at, but are also exceedingly overqualified for? It might be a guilty pleasure, but something you'd love to do and you just kill it, but you're just a little overqualified.
I would love to be like an event host. It doesn't feel like a TV show. TV shows would be great, but I'm probably not overqualified because I've never really been on TV. But like the kind of person who just introduces events and keeps a crowd going, just like at a comedy club,
Yeah,
in between acts. Yeah, like an MC who just, when I was in college, I was a DJ for a little bit at one point in my career. But someone who just like I love being in front of people. I love being on stage in front of people. I hate talking to people one-on-one. But put a camera in front of me or put an audience who has to sit there and listen to me in front of me, and I love it. So something like that would just be like, even just introducing community theater shows, but I just want to be up there with 5 minutes and a microphone.
What is that? What's exciting about that to you?
I don't know. Like I almost said like control, but that sounds so weird. Like I love when people listen to me speak. I'm inherently selfish in that way. I make content and put it out there because I want everyone to watch me. If I didn't, I wouldn't put it out there. I used to be a traveler. Like I said, I used to travel and sell nursing programs to rooms full of nursing students. Like I love getting in front of people, and maybe again, it was teaching them. Maybe it's like showing people and telling people something. I think I love delivering information to large groups of people.
That's great. I like that. It's a great answer. Also, I can see that there are likely going to be opportunities for you to do this, maybe not full time, but ongoing as you continue to produce content and continue to go down this path of becoming a true subject matter expert that is I'm going to use the I word, influencer. But you're already speaking, you're already going to conferences, and I can see you leading or being an MC within conferences like this and helping segue, introduce, but also interview and being part of that main stage.
Yeah, I probably will in there. The dream would just be doing somewhere super low stakes where it has nothing to do with my career. But yeah, I just like more opportunities. Like, and I tell people like I'm good on stage, right? I'm good on shows. When I speak, people don't know me enough in this industry yet. As I transition more to like working on like the HR business to business side instead of talking to job seekers all the time. I'm not as well known on that side. But everywhere I've ever gone and been on stage, like people see it. I tell people like, I make you put your phone away when I'm on stage. You pay attention, like you hear from me, you learn from me. And like when like I still get mad, the same way job seekers, when they get rejected for a job they're qualified for, they're like, oh, they're going to hire someone worse than me. Like when I apply for a conference and get told no, I'm instantly just, this conference is worse now because of me. Like you're just going to have someone on stage who's worse. So that's where I am with that stuff still.
Yeah, that's okay. That makes sense. That's awesome. No, I like that. I like that answer too. It's good. We all take these things personally, even though they're not.
Yeah, I told job seekers all the time, like it's not personal. Yeah,
it's not personal, and sometimes it literally has absolutely nothing to do with you or your resume or your application. It has everything to do with just we've got 100 others, and there was 10 that we were having a hard time choosing from, let alone another one. So literally has nothing to do with you. Unless they replied and said, hey, I don't like your face.
Yeah.
Rather not, you represent our company.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, just so often the person who gets hired is more about them than you. And right, it's just like when I open a role, if 500 people apply to it, at the end of that process, 499 people are going to think I did it wrong. They're going to think I don't know what I'm doing. They're going to think I didn't hire someone. They're going to think the wrong way. They think whoever we hired sucked. That's just like going in. We know that's going to happen. We know going in, 499 people are not getting this job. And sometimes I have to remind job seekers that, and they're like, what's that do for me? I'm like, you just have to know that. Because if you forget that and you make yourself the main character of every one of these job searches, it's so much harder to like accept what's really happening.
What do you do to set expectations at the beginning of this process for a candidate? So that way, when that eventuality happens, because they're only going to look for one job. They're only going to get one job, right?
Mhm.
Typically speaking. But they're going to be rejected from many. And so what do you do to prep them for those expectations that you're going to be rejected? Don't take it personally. And here's how I know that's going to be true.
As like someone talking to them in my content, it's that, right? It's reminding me of those stats. It's showing them that the average person gets 2% of interviews of roles they apply to. It's explaining that exact number. It's walking through, if 500 people apply and I interview 10, you're talking about a very small percentage. And then of those 10, let's say 4 move on to the final round interview. And now you're talking about 4 out of 500 people. You're talking they're the 0.001%.
Right.
And still 3 of them aren't going to get hired.
490 are annoyed, and somewhere between 7 and 9 feel completely insulted and rejected.
Yeah, or just heartbroken sometimes, just like whatever it is. And like, just when you make people always like, I get to the final interview and then they like didn't hire me, like they wasted my time, they dragged me along. I'm like, they didn't. It's just like you were in the final 2 or 3 out of 500. Think about how impressive that is. I know that doesn't pay the bills. I know that's not like good news, but if you can't think of it in that context, like you're never going to really understand.
Yeah, totally. This is awesome. All right, before we wrap up, any final words?
I don't think so. Obviously, I'm sure the links will already be there, but you can follow me on all social media and on LinkedIn, whether you're job searching or not, right? I talk about career things. A lot of things I talk about aren't even aimed at, can be applied to wherever you are and whatever you're doing. Like I talk about in the book, if you're reading this on the job search, let's be honest, it probably isn't your last job search. Like we're all one last minute calendar invite away from just like being on the job search again. And like most of us have been there before. So it's like, I talk about these things from the realm of what you can always be doing and where you should always be. So I think it's worth a follow if you care about your career at all or like the honest talk. Of course, pick up my book on Amazon if you like. I think it's great. And that's it. But obviously I can talk about this stuff forever.
Yeah, me too. And not because I'm an expert in this area by any means, but I'm curious. I love this because it's really all about helping people and navigating a very difficult, emotional, challenging situation and process that most people have to go through at least once, if not many times in their lives. And it's this sensitivity is pretty high and the opportunity for disappointment is also pretty high. So to me, this subject is very interesting because it directly impacts human beings almost across the board universally. And I want to be part of helping make it better. And I think I'm doing that by talking to people like you on this platform.
Yeah. And it's hard, right? I've also put together, if you're listening to this and you're a recruiter and on that side, I've put together like a recruiting community. I have a newsletter called Is This Still a Good Time? And it's taglined for recruiters hanging on by a thread. And I'm starting a podcast with the same title. And it's the idea of recruiting so hard right now and like on our end too. And we don't really have that community because the thing is when you're dealing with job searching, you are encountering most people during a low point of their life.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people in a really bad time, and you're adding more badness to them because you're rejecting way more than like you accept. And I don't want to make that sound like that's worse than being on the job search and getting rejected. Like I'm never trying to compare the two, but there is a lot of kind of just rejection and sadness and disappointment and all at the same time, people hating us. We're like the most hated people in capitalism. It goes like billionaires and then recruiters are just like the most hated people in capitalism right now. And that can be hard. So if you are a recruiter out there listening, I know it is hard, and find your community like to cope with these things.
Fantastic. Great words of advice. I will link the book below. Please go out and buy it. Support Mike. I look forward to the launch of the podcast. Great title. This is still a good time. Fantastic. I absolutely love it. I'm looking forward to it. Mike, thank you so much for being here. This has been a fantastic, elevated conversation.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you.
I want to thank Dave Weinberg for introducing me to Mike as today's guest and suggesting him to be here today. A fantastic suggestion. And I want to thank you, the listeners, for joining us on this episode of Transferable Skills. Remember, the skills you've gained can take you anywhere. Until next time, keep exploring those transferable skills.